It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by AgileDad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. In a recent advanced product owner class that I was teaching, I got a question that kind of shook me a little bit because it was the first time I ever received this question. And the question was, as a seasoned product owner, what question should I be asking? And when I asked for clarification, I said, are you talking about to your stakeholders? Are you talking about to gather information for a backlog? Are you talking about to leadership? And he reframed it and he says, no, he says, I'm just talking about in general from a coaching perspective. If I'm trying to help my teams accelerate and understand things better, if I'm trying to find or glean more information, what are the questions that I don't know to ask? What are the three most powerful questions I could ask? And I was like, wow. I was like, that is a very mature question, right? And it's one that I never sat down and took the time to think of. So after thoughtful consideration, I decided, okay, I should probably give an answer to that question. So here's what I came up with. So it's one of these things where I try, I love analogies, right? So imagine nosediving headfirst into a freshly baked pumpkin pie. That sounds crazy, right? But isn't that exactly how it feels when you're thrust into a leadership role for the first time? Just like that pie, it's exciting and somewhat delightful, yet a sudden rush could be completely overwhelming. It includes a crust of responsibility as a filling of staff related issues and whipped cream full of deadlines, and you're left feeling sticky and puzzled. I love this analogy. I'm going to put a link to the story in the details. QA coaching. Coaching isn't just about giving orders pizza style. You, pepperoni, you, mushrooms, right? It's about unlocking potential, unleashing creativity, and boosting effectiveness. And it starts with the amazing questions. All right, so let's get to the questions, right? Because I want to get these three questions out there because I really do think these are the three most powerful questions. So coming in at number 3, what's the real problem? So if you take, for instance, the tale of Mr. Fluffles, a house cat, with his signature smug grin, he'd sneak nibbles at all the houseplants. So we tried using squirt bottles and distractions and sometimes even cayenne pepper seasoning, which was messy. Uh, but one day I paused and wondered, am I addressing the real problem? Was it his plant thieving ways, or did he feel bored and missed out on stimulation? The day I introduced a catnip filled toy mouse was the day that he gave a farewell to his botanical crimes. So, similarly, a team member might not struggle with reports due to being meticulous. Instead, they might not understand why it's important. So the key, the aha moment, is by digging deeper, you unravel the true issue. You can then craft a solution based on the real issue and not the symptom. So you can graduate from firefighting to becoming a fire itself. And I think that that's where it gets interesting, right? So it's one of these things where a lot of times I go in and people present the symptoms. And this is a big subject in my Scrum Master classes. I'm like, that's the symptom, not the problem. I say it over and over and over again until people start understanding and identifying what the real problems are. So where am I going with this? I think the problem is incredibly hard to get to, but if you can get to it, more power to you. It's an outstanding place to be. All right, let's go to number 2. Number 2, that's interesting. What have you tried so far? So remember we're talking about that fiasco with Mr. Fluffles? It's like managing your team. You might use different strategies like team building exercises, bonuses, or Hawaiian shirt Fridays. Other times you're blindly throwing darts, hoping you'll eventually hit a bullseye. But by creating an open forum for sharing these attempts lights up a path. It shows others the way to learn from their failures, and it helps us gain collective wisdom as an organization or group. Once we shift our sales and promotions teams from team meetings from Monday morning to a windy Wednesday afternoon, reports improved as team members weren't fighting the Monday blues anymore. So it's one of these things where sometimes we got to ask ourselves why and ask ourselves what we tried so far. Sometimes the answer could be something very simple. I mean, shifting days for a meeting seems so elementary, so easy. It's almost like a test of obedience of whether or not we're going to do something. And I was reading an article about a guy who talked about 15 seconds of fame. And he says, while the 15 seconds of fame is pretty incredible and going viral is pretty incredible, he said the more important question is, what happens during second number 16? So he was like, what happens during that 16th second? And that is where it's like things that make you go, right? The 16th second is often where we discover who we really are. So it's one of those things where we have to improve our collective wisdom and figure out that small tweaks are the things sometimes that yield the biggest results. So we need to lean in on the small things. And then my number one question, my number one thing that you should be asking is, how can I help spark new ideas? So oftentimes people don't realize coaching is a two-player game. This question provides an avenue to jump on the court together and solve a complex problem. Some people will probably come up with the wildest ideas, but sometimes those wild ideas are what vet out to be the actual solution. So if you think about, so the example this author used was a radio station manager named Nina, and Nina would come up with the wildest ideas. She was a precocious promotions manager. She wanted to use real life kangaroos for a Foster beer commercial or promotion. I was skeptical. I asked how that idea would work in reality. This led us to have the most entertaining conversations, and it challenged us both to think outside of the box and helped animal welfare worldwide, no doubt. But if you're applying that same principle with your team, you can enter a brainstorming arena with an open mind, and you'll be amazed at the innovation that comes forth. A problem shared is a problem halved. So it's one of these things where you have to ask yourself, am I looking at the real problem or am I looking at a symptom? What have I tried so far? And even though it's crazy, what might we try in the future? And finally, how can I help with sparking new ideas? What can I do to contribute and create an environment of psychological safety and culture where people feel comfortable doing these things? And if you think about these things and tackle them in that way, it's going to be an opportunity for you to really, really do amazing things in a short amount of time. All right, so that's going to do it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have a topic you want us to discuss, learn more at AgileDad.com. We'd love to hear from you. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.